Hello ladies and gentlemen, welcome to a Paragon Guide. I am Sylphin. In this video we are taking a mathematical look at Mana versus Mana-Regen, otherwise known as Spark. This is version 2. I made a crucial error in the first iteration of this video, but we will explain that later. In this video we are going over which one is better. If either are, which scenarios are they better in? Maybe we can enlighten our understanding of what kind of purposes Mana versus Mana-Regen both function as. And here we are, ladies and gentlemen. Yes, it is a spreadsheet. Do not worry. It's pretty simple and we can definitely understand this, no problem. So guys, Mana versus Spark. What is the math behind it? What can we find? So there's some basic assumptions that we have to start off with. We're going to assume that we are level 15 and you know, they're in the mid late game, or in the late mid game, in the late game, what have you, at level 15. Our total mana pool, base mana pool, is 561, 200 when you start off the game, and 25.8 for every level you get afterwards, ending up 561.2 base mana pool. You have a total mana regen of 2.2448 at level 15, 0.6 something or other plus another 0.1 something or other for every level, where it works out to 2.2448 at level 15. Now we have another thing here. We have another variable, and that is average time regenerating. Remember that Spark Mana Regen is an over time thing, so we need to take time into account when we are comparing the two. We're going to talk about why 250 seconds is very important later on. So here is the chart, ladies and gentlemen. On this side we have CP 1 through 30, and we have Mana, and we have Spark. Now, what exactly is this number? This number, ladies and gentlemen, is total amount of mana you would have available to you if you were using abilities and blah, 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 when you were actively regenerating for 250 seconds. So I'm out on the battlefield, I use my very first ability from full mana, and then I'm always making sure that I am regenerating for 250 seconds. That is what this is. So this takes into account our base mana, and then it takes into account our mana regen for 250 seconds. We are actively regenerating for 250 seconds. You aren't sitting there at any point with full mana. You are actively regenerating. That is very important. You really have to understand that. You are actively regenerating. Please remember that. Please remember that. And then we go over here to Spark. 1 CP. It's exactly the same at 250 seconds. Interesting. We go down to 2 CP, and it's exactly the same. 3 CP is exactly the same. Interesting. All the way down right to 30 CP of mana or Spark. Now, why is that? 250 seconds, when you do the math, is when both are the same. You actively regenerate for 250 seconds, and Spark equals mana at that point. That is when they kind of are exactly the same value. In the previous video, I made a boo-boo. I put base Spark as being 0.6 instead of 0.3. For some reason I thought just, you know, 1.1 CP of Spark was 0.6, but it's actually 0.3. I am terribly sorry. You guys trust that when people make these guides that they do their homework, that they make sure that it is correct, and it wasn't in my previous video. I am very, very sorry. I feel really bad. I know that I might have definitely broken your trust, and I am very sorry for that. But here I am admitting to it. I'm making up for my mistake, and you can see I've actually done a much better job here in this black area of making some conclusions and some trends and some statements about it. So hopefully I can make up for it there. So 250 seconds. That's a long time. It's 4 minutes and 10 seconds. That's a fair amount of time. What if we were to decrease this number? What if we were to go half? 125 seconds, just a bit over 2 minutes. Well, I think you can probably guess that because you have less time regenerating, Spark is going to be less valuable, and indeed it is. 10 CP into either or, and you can see that Spark has fallen behind by almost 300 mana. A fair significant amount. As you can see, we can reduce this number even more here to 60 seconds, and as you can see, it's terribly less effective to provide you mana during a 60-second period, or rather for a 60-second period of when you're actively regenerating mana. During a team fight, 10-second team fight, I mean, it's going to be blatantly obvious here. Mana gives you almost twice as much value from a 10-second time regenerating mana. In a team fight, obviously mana is going to give you much better of a resource for you to use. Now, let's go back to our 250 seconds. That is our baseline where both equal out. Now let's say you happen to be in the late game and you win a team fight, and you had just gotten more prime and everybody kind of pushes the lanes, and you're out there for 5-6 minutes. You're out there until the next prime guardian comes up. So, you're out there for 360 seconds, 6 minutes. Well, let's see here. All of a sudden, that 5 CP you've spent into Spark actually gives you 300 more mana than you otherwise would have. That's 300 mana. That's, a fair amount of abilities. That's probably, That's 5 more abilities to be able to use, push down a lane a little bit quicker. Five abilities at level 60, that's a lot of damage. Easily take down a few more camps than you otherwise would have. But more importantly, maybe you have full mana then. That's 300 more mana you have for that next team fight. That's probably, and I'm kind of getting into a little bit later. So as you can see, I mean, of course, the more that we increase this, you're out there for 7 minutes. Of course, look at mana pulling ahead. 300 mana pretty much. 200 mana, sorry. So as you can see, the more time you spend regenerating beyond 250 seconds, Mana-Regen is better. Now, what can we glean from this? What are some of the important things that we can glean from this? Well, I will show you. I will do this, and let's see. So, trend number 1. Mana-Regen gives you more mana if you regenerate longer than 250 seconds. That's fairly obvious, we've established that. Trend number 2. Mana provides you more mana to use within a 250 second window. And I should actually say that that's the first 250 second window, from full mana and then onwards. Within the first 250 second window. So that's pretty obvious. That's what we establish here by analyzing this. Now, what are some statements we can make though about mana, about this resource that we have in the game? What is its function as a mechanic at all in MOBAs, in most video games, really? So statement 1. Mana's function is to be a resource for abilities, which serve various purposes. That's kind of a no-brainer statement, but understand that it serves a purpose. It serves a purpose. One of those purposes is not to make you look good. One of those purposes is not to be a big fat number that you can just stare at and be, pleased with. That's not a good purpose. It serves a purpose, various purposes. Okay, that's key. You have to remember that it serves a purpose, and it should serve that, nothing else. Statement number 2, the most important purpose is almost always to be available for team fights. Whether you realize it or not, or whether you agree with me or not, I think, in my opinion, that the most important part of most MOBAs, at least and especially in Paragon, the most important part are 2 team fights, usually the last 2 team fights. 1, if you win that team fight, you therefore then usually should gain a siege advantage. If it goes in your favor, you should gain a siege advantage. Get our prime, push the lanes into the towers, get a few towers, maybe an inhibitor, etc. The second team fight, usually in most cases, gives you the numbers advantage to then utilize that previous siege advantage and win the game. sometimes there's a third one. The first one doesn't go so well. Everybody kind of gets reset. Then the second, and then the third, and then you win. In general, I think that most MOBAs, especially Paragon, with how big the map is, comes down to 2 team fights. The most important purpose is almost always to be available for 2 team fights. Okay, so statement 3. Therefore, sufficient mana must then be available in order to maximize the use of abilities in these team fights. If the most important purpose is those 2 team fights, then I need to make sure that I have enough mana in those team fights. So, in one team fight, it's going to last anywhere, probably 10 seconds, but maybe 20 seconds. Maybe after 10 seconds, one team's probably going to be winning versus the other, so arguably the mana becomes less important. But in that 10-second window, how many abilities can I get off, or in those team fights in general, how much mana do I need to be the most effective? Figure that out. Sufficient mana must be available in order to maximize the use of abilities in team fights. Okay. Statement 4. It is not uncommon for a 1v1 or a 2v1 skirmish in the jungle, somebody gets caught rotating, something like that, turns into a team fight, especially in the late game, because death timers are really, really hurtful, so you need to rotate, protect your teammate. Having enough mana for both the skirmish, if you happen to be the one, or in order to win that skirmish, and the ensuing team fight seems reasonable. Having enough mana for both that skirmish and the ensuing team fight seems reasonable. I would want to have enough team fight to win that skirmish, and then once that, or during that team fight that occurs from that, win that one as well. That seems very reasonable to me, especially since it's really not uncommon for 1v1s or 2v1s skirmishes in the late game, especially to turn into a team fight. I want enough mana for both that skirmish and that team fight. Therefore, statement 5, the best use of time between these successful team fights, though, is to be on the battlefield, not back in base or in transit to and from. I want to go from a successful team fight right into lane, push a tower, get an inhibitor, etc. Push get a buff, get prime orb, do something useful and not have to go back to base, transit to and from, rotating all around the map. The best use of time between a successful team fights is to be on the battlefield, not back in base, or to transit to and from. You want to use that advantage you get from winning a team fight to the best of your abilities, so I want to be on the battlefield in between team fights. Some conclusions from these statements that we've just made. Regenerating mana in between these team fights, then, ensures maximum value from winning a team fight and enables the acquisition of siege objectives. Wow, that was pretty fancy. Regenerating mana in between these team fights ensures maximum value from winning a team fight and enables acquisition of siege objectives. If I can regenerate my mana in between, the team fights that happen kind of every 4, 5, 6 minutes, and be on the battlefield, use my abilities, push a tower, get some, everything that we just said before, that's going to give me the most value. Okay. Conclusion 2. Ensuring enough mana for the 2 10 to 20 second burst of abilities ensures maximum effectiveness in the skirmish and ensuing team fight. We kind of mentioned that before, but now we're making it a conclusion. I'm going to have enough mana for 2 10 to 20 second bursts of, to win that skirmish and the team fight. And then conclusion 3, building Mana-Regen after ensuring ensuring enough mana for 2 10 to 20 second bursts is therefore the most appropriate course. You don't need more mana than those two fights, that skirmish and the team fight. You don't need more mana than that. You don't. Because caps don't take more than a few abilities. Slow pushing a lane is the best thing to do, and even if you are hard pushing a lane, you're supposed to run out of mana, because that's the whole point. You're hard pushing it. You're going into the tower, getting that kill. Use your mana to do so, right? It serves a purpose. Use that to its effectiveness. You don't need more mana than 2 10 to 20 second bursts of abilities. You don't need any more. Therefore, afterwards, build Mana-Regen. Build Mana-Regen after that, so that you can stay on the battlefield, be effective through your abilities which require mana, which, if you just come out of a skirmish or team fight, you need to regenerate. Hopefully, ladies and gentlemen, this makes sense. Hopefully this was much more helpful than the other video. I am terribly sorry that I made that mistake. Hopefully we have made up for it and have changed a few things, come to a different conclusion, definitely a much stronger conclusion. I myself will do exactly that. Make sure I have enough mana for 10 to 20 second bursts of abilities, right? That skirmish that then turns into a team fight. And then after that, Mana-Regen. Mana-Regen. Because you don't need more than that. To put a number on it, even a high cooldown build like my Muriel Rapid Shields, I mean, boy, she probably really doesn't need more than 800, 900 mana. She really probably doesn't. And that's what? That's really not that much CP after your base mana pool. What is that? 400. So 75, that's 150. So 4 is 300. 5-6 points into mana. That's all. That's all. I just need 4, 5, 6 points into mana. The rest can be Mana-Regen. I'm pretty certain about that, ladies and gentlemen. Hopefully you agree with me in these conclusions here. Hopefully you guys learn something from this. Hopefully you found something useful. Thank you guys for watching very much. I really appreciate it. And again, I am sorry for the previous mistake. Hopefully this makes up for it. Please like the video if you like it, dislike it, dislike it. Share it with the community, of course, subscribe if you guys find this useful. Or simply just enjoy it. Please subscribe so I can do it for you in the future. Till next time, like always, ladies and gentlemen, stay optimistic and positive.